Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today we are continuing our annual tradition of we did our Game of the Year episode, we did our Movies of the Year episode, and now we're going to kind of talk about everything else that we enjoyed in 2024. We don't typically have like enough on the TV show side of things to be like, these are our favorite shows of the year, or I know you really love the anime stuff. So yeah, this is kind of the catch-all of everything else that we liked last year. No real rhyme or reason to it, no real ordering of things. We're just gonna talk, basically share the love of the other things we enjoyed in the last year. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. But with that said, Cam, I'll throw it to you first. Anything you want to give a shout out to as your first thing of 2024 that you loved?
This is 2024 was a year of a lot of trauma, sure, but a lot of trials, difficulties, and stuff like that I went through. Sometime around June, July, a game came out on PlayStation Plus. That was a game not from 2024, but it's a game that kind of caught my eye. Some friends got me into it. And that was Football Club 24 from it's basically the new version of what FIFA was before. It's what it is now. It is soccer, and by just exploring and playing that game, playing online with friends for the most part initially, and then kind of falling into it's the game that I'm interested in and want to play more of. So let me get into I created a team and did all that. But what really caught me into it was when I created a player named Rev Cabot, who I was I'll just play for this one team, and then I'll superstar it up, and then get a massive contract with another team that would pay me more at that point. And that team I joined was the Liverpool Football Club. After joining that team and kind of playing through it, and getting kind of I didn't know who any of these players were. I didn't know anything like that. This was a moment where I kind of I was oh man, I really I don't know what the heck the audience is chanting or singing, but there's something about it. There's something about the iconography of their gear and the phrase for the team, which is, you'll never walk alone. And it just it hit me at just the right time. And it was also the right time because in August is when the Premier Club starts its season. The Premier League starts its season. And I was well, you know what? I'm going to root for Liverpool. And this just so happens to be a season that Liverpool has dominated. And just gone on runs after runs and just been really great. And so Liverpool Football Club is my first thing on my that I'm coming up with. To the point where I can't tell you how many times I've almost pulled the trigger on buying a jersey or buying a t-shirt or buying anything. And it's not while I'm unemployed, not doing that. And it's just, it's been interesting because at the same time they're doing so great. And I'm but I haven't really talked about it. And I'm afraid that people are going to oh, Cameron, he's a bandwagoner, he's hopping on. They're having a hot season this year. So
I mean, you clearly are, but at least you had some sort of game-inspired rhyme or reason.
That's the thing, though. It's I never cared about soccer for the most part until I started playing this game, and I still didn't really care about it until I started playing with teammates like Nunez, Salah, all these team players that are now. Nunez especially has had hard past 12 games, and the other day yesterday he scored 2 to take them from a 0-0 at halftime to Liverpool winning. And it was just, I felt something about that, even though I shouldn't, it's an ocean away, and it's that, but I've now felt an emotional bond that I've built with these guys, which isn't real.
I mean,
it's
you're a New York
fake.
Jets fan. You're just basking in a team that's winning and doing well.
Listen, is that it? Maybe.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Is this what it's like to root for a winning team?
Yes.
As a Jets, Nets, Mets, and Islanders fan, is this what it's like to root for winning teams?
Yes.
So yeah, this has just been it's been a fun year. Shout out to our friend Beasley, who she kind of like also got me into it a little bit, like because she's a big Hotspurs fan, and I think it's Tottenham.
Yeah, Tottenham.
Tottenham's Hotspurs, and like I haven't had the heart to really talk to her about it because like we're dominating the league and they're not doing so hot this year. I mean, they're doing pretty well. But you know, yesterday we absolutely took 3 points and just like ran forward with it in the league standings. So,
all right, Liverpool FC, Cameron's first entry into the list. I'll throw one out there that's a largely like a catch-all of everything, and I'm sure it's in your list as well. And that's just Dropout.
Yep.
Pretty much everything that Dropout put out this year was a ton of fun, a delight. Like I always make sure to catch Make Some Noise when it comes out, Game Changer when it drops. Dimension 20, obviously, we started the year with Fantasy High Junior Year.
Yeah.
And then we had Never Stop Blowing Up as like the follow-up to that. So it was just like nonsense for the first half of 2024. Then we got Misfits and Magic Season 2. And in and amongst all that, we also had the Time Quangle like little one-shots, which I really enjoyed, kind of each of those.
I've caught up on several of them now too. So like
also,
they're excellent.
Yeah, they give probably a pretty reliable taste of the Viva Las Vegas show that we're going to go see later this year on your birthday.
So stoked.
So yeah, a ton of fun there. And then like a mix of kind of the classics of like, I love the breaking news. I like that breaking news kind of shook things up a little bit this year and they started playing around with like different formats and whatnot. Then you had shows like Smarty Pants, Thousand Airs, the new Dropout Presents series that they did that was basically like, you know, like to celebrate like one-man shows or comedy specials or stuff like that. That was a great series of kind of little extra one-off things that was exciting to see. And then even like some late in the year runs like Gastronauts I really enjoyed.
Gastronauts is awesome.
As somebody who's never like been a huge like cooking show kind of person or anything like that, this was really cool and like a fun take on that idea of like, we're gonna give comedians silly challenges to give you and then the chefs are just gonna show up and do their damnedest to try and make it all work.
As somebody who does love cooking shows, that hits all the fun parts about cooking shows and none of the bullshit.
Yeah.
It's great.
And then the latest one, Nobody Asked, I like as just kind of like, I haven't seen all the episodes yet, but the couple I've seen are like, it's like, oh, it's Dropout Mythbusters.
Pretty much, yeah.
And just a fun like group of people and entertainers that are kind of putting that one together and being like, hey, here's a dumb question we asked. Let's see if we can make it happen. Dropout. Once again, the actually switch of Mike Trapp and Michael Salton kind of stepping away in favor of Ife Iwadiwe and Brian David Gilbert as the fact checker. That was an interesting new kind of take on the season, and I like that they added in more like physical challenge type games into the mix.
We have a set stage for you to basically run around like a crazed chicken with your head cut off, trying to figure stuff out that you have no idea about, and it's awesome.
Yep. So yeah, shout outs to all the Dropout stuff from this year. Only a couple things that I was just kind of like, this really isn't for me. But even those things, like I would say like the Monet like slumber party thing, like I caught one or two of those episodes and I was like, this really isn't my vibe.
I get that too. It's not my vibe either.
But they were still like, they still had like fun clip outs and breakouts that I could see on the socials and be like, okay, those were the highlights. Cool. I can enjoy those little beats and not necessarily feel like I need to sit down and watch the whole 30-minute thing.
You're also not a fan of Dirty Laundry, are you?
Dirty
like that's
Laundry,
one of those you don't really touch in on.
Dirty Laundry really much like it comes and goes. If I know the people who are on the panel, I'm much more inclined to jump in and be like, what are their fun stories? If it's people I have no idea, don't know anything about, I'm like, I don't really like, this doesn't really vibe for me. But like, again, that's someone where I like catching the breakouts that they do because those are going to be usually the highlights from an episode.
I also appreciate that they give you, if you're on Dropout, you can look at the uncut version of Grant's drink choice.
Sure.
They have those as like director's cut versions where you get like the full spiel of what drinks they were having. Grant just is like, he's very much somebody who's in the cocktail scene.
He was a bartender for many years.
Yeah. And I think he just does a lot of like fun twists on stuff. So
Yep.
cool stuff.
Yeah, so Dropout, very much kind of earning a spot on my kind of overall blanket list. And that's like looking at, because I had like all of the shows kind of broken out as like, you know, things to highlight. And that's basically like half my list right there is just all the Dropout stuff we just chatted about. So yeah, shout out to Dropout once again, just proving it is the best value in the streaming wars and easily the one I spend most time in of anything.
It's so inexpensive and it provides so much value. It's like the one service I've never canceled.
Yep.
I've canceled every other service that I've ever done. That one is particularly special. That just does not disappoint.
Yep. So shout out to Dropout. Mm-hmm. What's next on your list?
Next on my list, I can do kind of a similar thing that you just did for Dropout with some anime, or do you want me to kind of hit them one by one as we go through?
Up to you.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and hit them one by one because there's a couple things I want to talk about some of them, and then some I really want to dig into. The first one I'm going to talk about is Delicious in Dungeon. Delicious in Dungeon is kept on Netflix, but it is a take on the fantasy genre that is very unique in not just anime, but also just generally in fiction. The kind of logistics of what does it take to kind of survive in like this like multi-tiered dungeon system is often just kind of like put away, but is really the focus.
What really makes up a short rest and a long rest in Dungeons and Dragons?
Kind of similar to that, but it's really more of like this team. It starts off with a team of adventurers who are on like a deep floor of it. They're fighting against this like legendary red dragon. And to save them while she's being eaten, the sorceress / cleric of their party, essentially teleports everybody out of the dungeon to save them. But in doing so, has left them without any of their supplies or major gear or equipment outside of like what they had on them. And so that creates a fundamental problem because they see her getting eaten before they're teleported away. They know that it takes a couple weeks for a dragon to be able to digest somebody. And there's like circumstances about the dungeon itself that has a lot of like metaphysical properties when it comes to spirits being able to like be prolonged there. So they have an opportunity to rescue the like leader of the party, Laios' sister. He's accompanied by a halfling professional that they hired to be a trap specialist, who turns out is also the head of the Adventurers Guild. But instead of having like a cushy job, all the adventurers, it's much more done like a union rather than like a traditional fantasy guild, where like, even the leader takes jobs. And then the best friend of the cleric that was eaten, an elven mage, who accompanies them. And basically, because of how limited their resources are with what they had on them, they're going to have to find food in the dungeon. In this process, they meet a dwarf named Senshi, who, for people out there who are familiar with the voice actor Pro ZD, who has made very famous vines.
Sunwon, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He voices Senshi, and he is fantastic. I will say this is one of the shows where I would say the dub is equal, if not better, than the sub. It just has such a both have fantastic casts, but getting the interesting levels of the new voice actors we're getting from Delicious in Dungeon is just a lot of fun. And on top of that, it's just like, okay, well, how do you cook a giant scorpion to be able to eat? And you find like it's just a fun journey that's about rescuing somebody, but at the same time, the importance of nutrition, well-balanced meals, as well as like foraging, and important notes about foraging. For example, they do one with a basilisk, but it's not like the basilisk from Harry Potter, the giant snake. It's the traditional half snake, half chicken, or half rooster basilisk. And you have like basilisk eggs, mandrakes. Like, what is the best way to do a mandrake how do you tend to mandrakes and like cultivate them. It's done in such a very interesting way that each episode feels like it's a smaller part of a greater adventure. And then it's like, how does this party, this like mishmash party, take down a dragon? And they get into that, and then you get a deeper lore dive into the nature of this dungeon itself and kind of like what its origin is and what's going on with it. It's just very cool. There's different factions going about it, and it just gets deeper and deeper into the lore and into the world that they're in such a fascinating, fantastic way. Did
you play a game a few years back? I don't think you did. Battle Chef Brigade?
I did play Battle Chef Brigade. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking about as you're kind of talking about this, because that was very much like, hey, there are monsters in our land and we need to slay them, but also let's turn that into a cooking competition.
Yep. I think the original story for Delicious in Dungeon predates Battle Chef Brigade, but I might be wrong on that.
I'm sure it's just kind of like different.
Oh, it's very, I will say, very different
with similar ideas and stuff.
Very different in a lot of different ways. Battle Chef Brigade is very much like a person going through trials and trying to like become a certified chef or like, get that honor, versus this one being like they're desperate and so they're eating monsters. It's just very cool. It's done in a very cool, fun way. And I highly recommend it. It's one of those things where it's like, if you needed a reason to have a Netflix subscription, I would say watching Delicious in Dungeon is a good way to do that. Season 2 is likely going to be coming out this year. I don't know if it's been announced that it's coming out in 2025, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. So definitely something to keep your eye on.
Cool. Let me see. I got a handful of TV shows, so I'll throw one out there. In the similar vein, sticking with kind of the dungeoneering and adventuring, Legend of Vox Machina Season 3 came out this year, and just like continues to be a fun way of experiencing that original Critical Role campaign, and then kind of in tandem with that, the just like keeping up with Critical Role. I definitely like fell off for a while and then kind of just popped back into the show and enjoyed for a handful of episodes and then kind of fell off again. But they're nearing the end of campaign 3, and it's been just a highlight seeing kind of that team firing on all cylinders, especially because so much of this end game of the campaign has been, let's bring back our parties from the first 2 campaigns and have basically all 3 of their campaign parties working together. Mm-hmm. So there's like one incredible episode that's like the Mighty Nine mixed with Bell's Hells, and they're all like going off on a mission together, and they're all in Caleb's like 9-sided tower together and just having like conversations with like both parties. So like every performer is basically just like juggling which character they're playing in any given moment to have conversations across campaigns and stuff like that. And just like Matt Mercer kind of calls out, this is my favorite episode, in part because he doesn't have to do anything. Yeah. He can just kind of let them have fun with it. And just really, really fun, creative, and like such a unique situation for actual play thing, I think, of them getting to really play with all of their kind of different past iterations and stuff like that. So shout out to Critical Role, and especially shout out the thing that really kind of got me after I'd fallen off for like 20 or 30 episodes. The thing that got me back was the Downfall arc that had Brennan coming back in for a 3-episode guest stint to basically do what he had done with Calamity of like, we're gonna go back and see the downfall of Ao, or another flying city in the past about to crash, and the cool concept that they did with that of having all of the PCs be avatars of the gods.
It was so cool.
In that time of the War of the Gods was a really just such a cool, interesting look at kind of the history of the Exandria that Matt and his team have built over the years. So shout out to Legend of Vox Machina as like really the first thing, even before Calamity, that I ever watched of Critical Role. Season 3 here is very much the end of like the Chroma Conclave arc, which was basically like their season 2, season 3 story. And then they're coming back for season 4. They've got a Mighty Nine series kind of in the works too. So yeah, season 4 I imagine is going to start taking them down. I believe the Vecna story arc that kind of culminates and wraps up the first campaign of Critical Role. So looking forward to just seeing where they continue to take that show. Oh, and the probably the coolest thing of Legend of Vox Machina season 3 was folding in, and we got a cameo appearance from Luis as Xerxes from Calamity.
Yes.
Like, we got to see his character from Calamity, 1,000 years on in his demon form, still kind of like servant of Asmodeus, like interacting with some of the characters. So them getting to like even kind of rewrite and change elements of the original story to better fall in line with like the stories that they've told since, and kind of the way that they've fleshed out that world was such a cool flavor.
The way they've also, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the way they've upped the drama by taking away some things that happened in the main campaign, and being like, hey, we're doing something different, and it's not pulling punches. It's really we're going to delve into this a little bit heavier.
Yeah, especially like the other thing that is, I think has really kind of helped. It's an interesting dynamic is obviously for the first 2 campaigns, Ashley Johnson was away for a lot of the time because she was off filming Blind Spot. And so like in the Legend of Vox Machina show, we're getting to see what it looks like if Pike wasn't as absent of a character. So
that's a cool thing.
Pike is there to be there for Scanlan, and so maybe Scanlan doesn't have these, very traumatic, heartbreaking sequences that he had in the original campaign, because he does have somebody that's there kind of with him in the thick of it, and helping him out. So
really giving you a different,
cool like alternate history kind of take on the campaign 1 stuff. So yeah, shout out to Legend of Vox Machina and just all of the Critical Role-ness of the last year.
Yep. As somebody who does not watch Critical Role stuff, I will say
but you came in for the Downfall, right?
Oh, Downfall. Yeah. I was about to say Downfall.
Also, like, shout out so Abu Bakar Salim
having a year.
A
difficult year, but a year.
A year. I mean, he had Legend of Kenzera Zhao being his game, but then him being in the Downfall as the what is it? Heart, Change Heart? No, that's not right. Whatever the Archheart.
Archheart, yeah.
The Archheart god in Exandria, coming back a few episodes later when the Bell's Hells team meets the Archheart, and basically like Matt handing over the DM reins to him for the conversations they were going to have together was just such a cool like way of continuing on the interesting choices that he made during the Downfall thing, and just a great fun collaboration of everything. So
also Downfall just being a very good insight into the gods, and looking at it and being like, and thinking to myself, like, I don't know very much about like the actual show itself, but I know some very basic premises. Maybe the Ruby Vanguard is right. It's kind of like Downfall makes a very good argument for the bad guys in season 3.
Yeah.
And that's something I love about it. I love that is it is such a fun way for somebody like Matt Mercer, who's an experienced DM, years of doing the show, and then decades of doing dungeon mastering since he was a teenager, really getting to tear into it, but also getting the fun twists that I feel like only Brendan Lee Mulligan can do. Only Brendan Lee Mulligan, like maybe more people could do these twists, but the misdirection, the way he is able to play off a story, and a tight story at that. Downfall is like the sequel. Like, we have Calamity, we have its sequel in Downfall, and I can't wait for whatever trilogy we get of these Brendan Lee Mulligan led ones. Of course, I've gone on the record before by saying Brendan Lee Mulligan is like my actual play DM of choice, followed by Abria Iyengar, then Matt Mercer. And I know I'm in the minority on that. I know most people love Matt Mercer. I just don't like it's my difficulty is like I don't want to watch something for 6 hours as they're doing their like abridged versions on Beacon.
Yeah.
That's
the interesting thing is you are much more of a Matt Mercer DM than you are a Brennan DM or an Abria DM. And I think it is just like there is an element, certainly the length of a Critical Role versus a Dimension 20. But I think the thing that the length of Critical Role gives Matt is the breadth and freedom to build out his world in the way that you've built out the world in our campaign. So yeah, you're way more of a Matt Mercer than you think you are.
Oh no. I hear you and acknowledge that's probably true.
Yeah.
I do not think I'm like a Brendan Lee Mulligan or an Ibria Iyengar. I don't think I'm that kind of a DM.
Yeah.
I definitely don't got the funny chops to be those two. If it comes down to like what DM do I want to play with or DM I want to like watch DM, those two I will take over Matt Mercer. But at the same time, Matt Mercer is a world builder and a lore builder and isn't all about that improv. But has a lot of like stuff prepped. I like that Matt Mercer has, and yeah, I see what you mean by that. Like the little traps, the little things that are like kind of spread out through there for you to step on and like find out more stuff and information. Granted, you also decided to legend lore something and okay, here we go. Wasn't ready, but we're like, it's definitely one of those like, fuck it, we ball moments that I sometimes have to do as a DM.
Well, in that specific example, I was even giving you as the out for like, and we'll pick up here next time with our trademark. Who the fuck are you? Being like an outro line that we've used in our little internal campaign so many times.
Yeah,
I touched a statue and was like, and who the fuck are you? Thinking, okay, he'll come back with this next week and we'll talk about, what this means. And you were like, no, I'm just going to make it up in the moment here. So I was like,
well, the thing is, I knew, because I already know what that creature is.
Yeah.
And I know what it is. And by the way, the idea of what I mentioned about like the keeping stuff out, but also keeping something in, that's a more recent development. Mm-hmm. Before they were on a tiered system. Now I was like, actually, I like this idea better. This was about a month and a half ago, when we were in the middle of doing the liberation.
We'll talk more about it because that's going to be another thing I'm going to throw in the bucket here. But Critical Role just a ton of fun to see over the year, and it was I had stepped away for a good 20 episodes just because of how long it is to catch those episodes, and then they did the other thing I was going to circle back to, like the whole campaign 3 has been interesting because like. It has very much been from the start, like the gods are under attack and the Bell's Hell's crew being largely, well, who gives a fuck? What do they do for us? The only one that was really a religious character was FCG, who was like a cleric of the Changebringer, but then they died, some 30 episodes ago now or something like that. And so that put the path of the characters even more aloof, and they didn't have, a deity to really like, get behind or put any stock behind. So the downfall ends up being just kind of like, they've throughout the entire campaign, they were very much like, maybe Predathos, the God Eater, is right. Maybe the gods aren't worth saving. People existed here before the gods showed up and kind of like playing with that idea. So I think Downfall was just like another examination for that and another kind of tool for that team to kind of put in their bucket of like, we've seen how selfish they can be. And, do we support that selfishness because we see it in ourselves, or do we look at that and say, well, fuck you, we're going to do this our way?
Yeah.
And so it's been a great kind of, I think, back and forth that they've had, especially in the post-Downfall, where they did meet with the Archheart. They met with the Matron of Ravens, and they've had like other interactions with the gods after the fact to with the gods basically trying to make their case a little bit more hands-on direct.
Yeah, it's for me. Well, Matron of Ravens is such an interesting character because she is somebody who usurped a god's portfolio. So she has an interesting look at it. And what you told me about that conversation with the Archheart, that also has a lot of like interesting stuff going on with it. So I will say, like, when it comes to like the lore of Exandria, like I dig it. It's a cool place. It's just those long ass sessions. Especially because if it was just like, hey, we're going just to do it, and it's going to be like, we're going to just do this stuff and it's cool, that'd be one thing. But they oftentimes get caught up in their own internal storytelling where it feels like the wheel is spinning, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's fair. That happens in D&D campaigns.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, it's their sessions are on par the length of one of our sessions.
For sure.
And we definitely have episodes where like episodes, I say. We have sessions where like we end and like, I feel like we didn't really do anything tonight. Like in terms of like moving the plot along, but there's stuff internally that happens. So yeah, shout out to all of that stuff. What's next on your list?
Next on my list is another anime. My next few things are going to be a couple animes. And this one is called Mr. Villain's Day Off. This is a anime that is about, I've read the manga online for a while. This is what's called a 4-panel, imagine it like a basically traditional comic strip of a American newspaper, 4 panels. And this one's done in a bit more of less of a 4-panel, but like definitely in the limited storytelling style of like these very brief stories. And it's the story about what happens when, in the Power Rangers show, Super Sentai in Japan, there are always these like, not the head villain, but like the general, the Goldar, the big general characters that are like repetitious characters that are like officers in the evil army that the Power Rangers are fighting, right? This is the story about what one of those guys does on his day off. And it is because a lot of times in Super Sentai, especially, these villains have like human personas. This one is about a guy who likes to relax on his days off and go to the local panda zoo and look at the pandas. And he dreams of wiping out humanity and like making pandas the dominant species on Earth. And it's about him. One of the first issues is him getting found in his civilian persona by the Red Ranger. And the Red Ranger trying to fight him and him being like, no, I'm on my day off. We're not doing this on my day off. And it really is about like the escapades of this villain. Also about like how he is as like a manager to the other like lower echelon of villains. And kind of like a corporate kind of salaryman career level structure to this sort of like world that has Power Rangers in it. And yeah, it's a very loving story about people who are professionally enemies, but have and it's also like very clear that there's hesitation on part from this villain now of like, do I really want to destroy do we really want to destroy Earth? Like we are the evil invaders, but like, what does that mean? What does that look like for our people and culture? It never goes too deep. And it really is just telling the story about this like a panda obsessed villain who wants to just enjoy his days off. And as somebody who like, this show coming out during like a really hard part of my previous career, felt very seen by this anime, in a very big way. So a lot of love to, Mr. Villain's Day Off. It's well done, well animated, really lovely, and just 12 tight episodes of a couple different, of probably about 20 to 24 stories, that just work for it. It's still an ongoing manga. It's monthly release. It's like I said, these are very shorter type of stories, but it's just extremely well done. So
nice.
Have just a lot of love for it, but not a lot to say about it without it just spoiling everything about the show.
Yeah, I mean it's that fun kind of trope of like, yeah, let's take a look at. I mean, it's obviously like it's the comedic version of Wicked, basically. It's and Twisted that is certainly one of my favorites from the Star Kid team. It's that kind of thing. Like another thing that I was thinking about while you were talking about it was the last character standing bits that they did on the Edge 103.9.
Oh my gosh,
back in the day.
Yeah.
Where it was like they would come up with a character and it was like Tony Montana, pharmacist or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it's basically like a character or a very tropey kind of thing going on for like a little 2 to 3 minute monologue and just hitting all those jokes. But if that character, won the vote, they carried on to the next week. And so you'd get those kinds of like mashups of like,
I have not thought about that show in years, and I literally would go online and vote in it. So
yeah,
it was awesome. 103.9 The Edge, unspoken hero of my childhood.
In the day, yeah.
Yeah.
The 103.9 with the you had like the whatever dog with inner monologue was like the long running champion for so long and
Yes.
stuff like that. But
Real American Hero that they used to do, and the parody of the Bud Light or Coors Light commercials.
Yeah.
They do it and be like, this person, it's like just the worst dude ever. Awesome stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. Next up on my list, sticking in TV land, we'll go ahead with the Fallout show.
Hells yeah.
This was a ton of fun. As somebody who's long been a fan of Fallout, like I enjoyed Fallout 1 and 2 back in like early PC days and stuff like that. But really probably got super into Fallout with Fallout 3, and just like the fun of wandering around a post-apocalyptic DC, and then obviously with New Vegas, and then eventually Fallout 4, continuing that on. Like, Fallout was one of those things I was always of the opinion that like, oh, Fallout could be such an amazing show if you do it like an anthology series where like every season you are following a different vault hunter from a different vault in the world.
Sure.
And you're seeing, you know, like the games do of like you're going on an adventure doing their kind of thing. They're not going that route, but this is very much like the impetus for their original kind of idea here of we follow the Lucy from that vault, and we've got the ghoul as a fun kind of carryover from the pre-war world.
Yeah.
And a great performance and fun bit from Walton Goggins there. The weakest element is like all the Brotherhood of Steel stuff, but
that's still good.
Always like a weak element, and I think it's also especially like I think one of the weaknesses maybe of the Tad Howard Bethesda era in terms of like the Falloutness of things is that they get really hung up on like the power armor of the Brotherhood of Steel and like the cool look of that without maybe like the support of like what a shitty faction they actually are.
Oh yeah.
And they make them out to be like the heroes of the story when they're not. And at least this like gives us a little bit of a glimpse of that, of like, yeah, a lot of the Brotherhood people we see suck. But overall, like that story just was far less interesting than the other two that we were following, kind of our little trio of protagonists there. But it did all of the things I want from a Fallout show. It gave me fun, silly new vaults to kind of like see what the twisted thing was going on. It gave great backstory into kind of the, you know, the why Vault Tech was doing the things they were doing. And yeah, while I would have loved to have like a new Fallout thing to play that's not Fallout 76, because I'm never going to get into Fallout 76, the fact that
I couldn't get into it.
The fact that they did do like a remaster, like, you know, here's the PS5 version of Fallout 4, gave me a reason to jump back into that. And as I touched on in my my game of the year, and then especially my recent trophies list, like I sat down and basically replayed through Fallout 4 and got every trophy in that game, got the platinums, did all the DLC things, and just had a great time going back and revisiting the wasteland of Boston in that game. So shout out to the Fallout series being like a surprise win. Like I definitely went in hoping for the best and was pleasantly surprised that they didn't fuck it up. So shout out to Fallout.
Yeah, massive shout out to Fallout. It is, in my opinion, was one of the best shows of last year. I think that it absolutely delivered on such an intrinsic level of capturing the vibe and feel of the Fallout series. You know, that vibe and feel that carries on through Fallout 1 and 2, and then into 3, New Vegas, and 4, despite the fact, like, handing this, like, the franchise over to different people. I feel like they were able to really capture, like, the real vibe that Fallout needs to have. I think this is the problem that Fallout 76 has, is I don't really feel that vibe from it. I see the stuff, I see the iconography, the stuff going on with it, but I never felt like this was like a curated world.
Yeah. That's my gripe with Fallout 76, and I know they've added NPCs since, but was like from the jump, it was an empty world populated only by other players. I'm like, well, that's the least the player's the least interesting thing of a Fallout world. Give me the stories and the other characters and the random, weird ghouls that I'm going to run into that are going to have a side quest for me to do an adventure with and stuff.
And they've definitely added those, but it feels like an add-on. It's not, the world is not built around that. So the world has a weird kind of like mix of these, like the survivalist aspect and like base building aspect of this game, but it doesn't fit in my opinion, with the overarching like adventure of the romp through the wasteland that Fallout necessarily is.
Yeah. I mean, like some of the as I think back at the on the Fallout show, like a couple of the characters I think about the most are the Chris Parnell Vault Overseer.
Yes.
And then also the Fred Armisen like radio guy playing the like absolutely terrible violin music, but he has booby-trapped the shit out of his radio station, so you would absolutely pull him up on your Vault Boy and be like, oh my god, I hate this guy, I want to kill this guy.
Yep.
And, walk into one of those traps if you were playing the game. It does, for the Fallout kind of like staples and mainstays, the same thing that the D&D movie did 2 years ago for me, in terms of like, it nails the fan servicey kind of moments so precisely and so well that it's like, yes, absolutely, this is firing on all cylinders.
It's fantastic. I can't emphasize it enough. It's one of those things that's like you said, you were hoping for the best. I was expecting the worst. I was just expecting it to be terrible, and then it just absolutely nails every aspect of it. The worst part about it is the Brotherhood of Steel stuff, and even then, that stuff's still pretty dang good.
Yeah,
like that's
you get the fun Brotherhood like minion scribe guy, who gets ghoulified and gets like an arrow through his neck. It's like, why am I not dead?
Yeah, why am I not dead? Why am I still alive? It's like, I think you're a ghoul.
It's like, you're a ghoul.
Oh no,
Brotherhood hates us. I gotta run. Yeah.
That hits a whole like I'm figuring out that the guy that I don't like, sucks, and I'm gonna get him in trouble. And it just leads into that aspect of the story. That leads us to that big final fight between this remnant of the Republic versus the remnant of the Brotherhood of Steel, and I love it.
Showdown at the Lowell Observatory.
Yeah, just awesome stuff. It's Fallout LA. It's what you wanted out of a Fallout LA story, and the ghoul is one of the coolest characters because we get to see at the beginning. It's like, how did this famous actor become a 2-bit party booking, and then we find out about like the calculated like his wife's calculated rise, and then what we now get a prediction of, which is his fall from grace in society. And it gives us an answer. The reveal they gave us in the show of like, and I'm not going to spoil it, the reveals they give us in the show about ghouls, like who was dropping the bombs, all of that stuff makes it work so well. And we also get to see some really great cameos from some companies that are very popular and famous throughout the Fallout universe. Yeah. And
the tease that is like, oh, season 2 seems to be taking us to New Vegas, and you have Mr. House present in in kind of the pre-war stuff. Is like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
They cast their Mr. House. We're very excited.
Plays out. Yeah.
Also means that we might get like a quote unquote canon sort of ending for New Vegas, which is like, I'm fine with that. Also, it's far enough from the game New Vegas for anything to have happened. I'm very excited about it. And also New Vegas, the last DLC doesn't end with like New Vegas, like maybe gonna have like great prosperity. There's a lot of dangers in the wasteland and a lot of dangers coming for New Vegas as a whole. So don't get upset that like it doesn't have the ending that you earned in New Vegas, the game. It's been long enough. It's okay.
Yeah. That can still be your ending.
Yeah.
Calm down.
But yeah, no, I think that they're just that like, yeah. First of all, love that Todd is like, we love New Vegas and we're excited for the show to go to New Vegas. That is, I think there's been a long running belief that Todd hates New Vegas, hates that New Vegas, like people prefer it over Fallout 3. And I think that it's sad because in spite of like several interviews and him talking about the things he loves about New Vegas, that New Vegas Obsidian introduced to it, I think that is just like a bad rap. And I think people just forget that Obsidian has their own stuff they're working on. Also, the people who loved and made New Vegas, not all of them are at Obsidian anymore. Some of them are in other places. So it's like, if you want I think a remaster of New Vegas would be fantastic, but to get like a New Vegas, it wouldn't be the same. And I think it's that expectation that people have of like, well, I love this thing. I want another one of this thing. It's like, but it won't be the same thing.
Yeah.
Just get a half decent PC, mod the shit out of New Vegas, like I have.
Some of the delight of what makes New Vegas as special as it was that it had a lot of the original Fallout people there working on from Obsidian. It had a lot of the Black Isle people at Obsidian at the time. So like they got to kind of go back and revisit ideas that had maybe hit the cutting room floor in their original games.
Not just that, but Van Buren, which is what Fallout 3 originally was going to be at Black Isle Studios before they shut down, a lot of those things carried over. Joshua Graham, the Burned Man, that you hear a lot about in the base game and then in the Honest Hearts DLC, he is originally a character from Van Buren that they brought in and redid and re-fleshed out and completely did it. A lot of the things that Van Buren was special about Van Buren, they were bringing out here, and they were able to incorporate a lot of those ideas. He said cutting room floor. This was a game that was never going to come out, and they were able to take a lot of those ideas and build New Vegas with those.
Yeah.
Being a part of it. It's awesome. Be grateful for what we've gotten, and don't be too upset about the stuff that we'll never get. Yeah. So
what's next from your list?
That's right. Because we're back on my list. Next from my list, we're going back for another anime. Like, listen, my next few ones, like I said, are going to be anime. This one is Windbreaker. Windbreaker is an anime that is about a high school tough guys, basically. And like, what does it mean to have strength, and what does it mean to be a part of a community? It stars its main character is Haruka Sakura, who is this is where this is a modern anime, but it's pulling a lot of like 80s, 90s anime vibes from it. To the point where it's like for some reason this school is just full of delinquents, and is run by the delinquents themselves. They don't really seem to have any like staff or teachers here for some reason. And for some reason, the high school runs this part of town. It's the kind of like ridiculous nonsense that was in a lot of 80s and 90s animes. It's being brought up here, and it's being done with like a very cool modern twist to it, where basically it's about like, what is the purpose of strength and purpose of community being told through the lens of a bunch of hot dudes who fight each other. Very simple premise, and anime style. Like, the main character has heterochromia with one brown eye and one gold eye, and his hair is split down the middle, half black, half white. Very basic stuff, very basic, like very like from the 80s, 90s anime stuff being pulled into like the modern day, but being done with a lot of fun writing, a lot of fun characters, and just overall just a lot of fun ideas. I think the last couple episodes have a lot to be desired of. They spent a lot of times kind of like retreading ground in a way that reminded me of like the ending of Death Stranding for some reason. Of just like, we're going to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm like, you have gotten through. I do not know how anybody would not have picked up on this at this point. Can we move on? And they just don't. They just kind of end the season there with that. I don't anticipate this one will get a second season. If it does, that'd be cool. But
it does. It's coming April.
In April. Oh my gosh, April's coming up soon. Okay, cool. Did not realize that. Here's the thing. It's really about like a lot of like very simple but well stylized animation for the action scenes that make it cool. But it's also about seeing characters who are tough guys get flustered by basically the like people caring about them, and instead of it being them being like these like heartless jerks who are part of a gang that run the city, instead these are like a lot of community helpers and stuff like that. But it's kind of like tough guys who are soft guys at heart who you don't want to mess with, because when they're being tough guys, they'll whoop your ass. The main character is coming to this town and like came to this high school specifically because he wants to climb to the top and be the strongest guy at school. But this is him learning that the strongest guy in the school isn't the strongest just because he's tough. It's because he cares about other people as well. And he's really thrown off by that because it's also commentary on the nature of power and what happens when somebody who has a lot of power is also somebody who loves the people that he has power over. It goes into that a little bit, and but yeah, it's pretty awesome. Don't want to when it first premiered, I was like really hot on it and really hot for it, but cools off in the last like episode or two. Overall though, pretty solid show. Definitely recommend it. One of my favorites of the year.
My next one, I'm gonna go with Doctor Who.
Hell's yeah.
Just because it was fun being back into the Doctor Who verse this year. With the obviously we got back into it with the 60th anniversary things coming to Disney Plus, and basically it being Disney Plus stuff meant we could talk about it on the D Plus show. As somebody who fell off the show during like the Peter Capaldi era, and then like eventually caught up and caught the rest of the Peter Capaldi stuff, and then caught the Jodie Whittaker.
Oh my gosh.
Episodes.
Jodie Foster, Jodie Whittaker, two very different people.
Yeah. I still haven't seen the full Flux arc that happened. I want to say like beginning of the pandemic kind of thing. But I've also heard that like I don't really need to.
You don't need to.
So yeah,
recaps on YouTube are enough. I think I watched it and it's fine.
Yeah, jumping back in for the Tenet stuff, and then new Doctor with Ncuti Gatwa. The season was a lot of fun. It was a rough start with the Space Babies episode. Did not like that. I thought that was like the weakest of the episodes for the season.
Certainly the weakest of the episodes, but I still enjoyed a lot of it.
But enjoyed where we went from there. I enjoyed like we had Boom was a great episode. We had Rogue was probably my favorite of the season.
That episode was so good. Little Bridgerton, little Love.
Yep. And then we had the holiday special at the end of the year too, which was certainly a standout among the holiday specials. So it was just fun being back into Doctor Who, and shout out also to like Who culture, and also retroactive shout out from the Critical Role stuff to Super Geek Mike, who's basically like the D&D Critical Role YouTuber that I watch. He does great like recaps of he's going through the first campaign of Critical Role and talking about like lessons we could learn as a DM or as a player from those first Critical Role series. And then he also just does whatever topics are in the D&D conversation elsewhere as well. But like he's the YouTuber I watch related to that stuff. Who Culture's the YouTube channel I watch for a lot of the like the recaps of the Doctor Who episodes, or their lists, or ups and downs and Easter eggs and stuff like that. So yeah, shout out to the tangential media around some of these things as well. But yeah, Doctor Who, just fun to be back in, and I look forward to where they go in this upcoming season too. So, anything to add on that, or you want to move straight to your next one?
I love the hell out of it. If you want to know more about my thoughts, feel free to watch that D Plus show.
Yep. Cool. And hit me with your next one.
My next one is going to be this is a little bit of one that I want to take some time on a little bit here. This one is called Solo Leveling. This originally is a
little time, as if you didn't take time on Windbreaker and Mr. Villain's Day Off, and like you're taking time on each of them.
Fair enough. All right, I won't make that comment anymore.
I don't have anything to really add to any of them because I've not experienced any of these things. But Solo Leveling.
Yeah. Solo Leveling. This is originally a web novel written in Korea that was popular enough to get its own comic adaptation on the Webtoon service. It got brought over to the United States via Yen Press and their Webtoon app here in the US. And it is this is Solo Leveling specifically is the anime adaptation of that story. It is a brilliant story about a world of urban fantasy where essentially magical gates that start appearing around the world, and people who are essentially infused with magical particles are capable of magical abilities or feats of strength. And they enter these gates and harvest the materials in there and bring them out. And it's helped fuel the economy, a bunch of other stuff like that. But what is dangerous about these gates and why you need these, licensed hunters to go into them is because if you leave them alone for long enough, a gate break happens. And what happens is the creatures from that gate break out into the real world and start destroying it. The story bases around, I'm going to actually pull this up so I don't misremember it, but is essentially about Sung Jin-woo, Sung Jinwoo is also known as humanity's weakest hunter. He's a level E hunter, which is the lowest class of hunter you can be. And even among level E hunters, he's known for having incredibly weak. And he is somebody who, for the sake of his family, his sister's in school, his father's missing, and his mother is suffering from a magical disease that started infecting people that put them into a coma and is an expensive upkeep. So to help out his family, he has been going into these dangerous places that risking his life to make the meager salary enough to, it's more money than he would be able to make in another job, but he has to put his life on the line all the time. And so there's a level of people that initial episode who have respect for him on that level and care about him. And then there's people who kind of deride him and look down on him for it. He ends up going into this dungeon that ends up being called a double dungeon because there's a dungeon inside of the dungeon. And because of the greed of the people, some of the people he's with, they end up in a death trap that supposedly kills him, but somehow he survives it. And what happens, he suffers from something called a reawakening, which is where the awakening is something that happens to you at first, and that's what gives you kind of the magical propensity to become a hunter and do these dungeons. A second awakening is something where, because once you receive your rank, that's it. The moment you awaken, as much power as you have then is as much power as you're ever going to have. You can become more skilled, more practiced, and really flex the ability and power that you have and make it work for you, but it doesn't go higher. And he ends up discovering it with his reawakening is he didn't grow magically more powerful, but what he has access to now is a leveling system. And this leveling system gives him challenges and ways to basically improve himself to increase his power and his level. And this is the story of basically his climb to the top. It's a story of him going from the weakest hunter of humanity to something greater than that. And the first season came out last year. The second season is currently ongoing. It came out early in mid-January. Sorry, we're in mid-January. It came out early January this year. But the story of the original manhwa, which is the Korean comic webtoon, spoke deeply to me. It's spoken deeply to a lot of people. It was suggested to me by some people recommending it, and just dug deep into it, caught up to it, and was reading it when the finale happened for it. It really is one of the best things to come out of Korea in a long time. That's not, like a K-pop group. I think that it is a direct commentary on the harshness, and it's a really critical commentary on the harshness of the kind of largely capitalistic society that Korea, America suffers from it as well. And that's brought up as well too. America is one of those superpowers that also has hunters and stuff like that. And it comes into play. But it's also about it delves into kind of the lore and nature of these gates. It goes deeper into that and kind of the origin point of these gates, which is something that's a mystery to humanity. Capitalism has capitalized on these dungeon gates to essentially make it a fuel of an economy, and created, S-rank hunters who are essentially calamities walking, now have this enormous amount of power and privilege, and it really is an oppressive system. And this is direct commentary on oppressive systems that value people. It also speaks to the frustration and depravity of a utilitarian system. It does it in a lot of really cool ways. Just love the story, love the characters. Jinwoo is a true client, coming for it and earning it sort of hero. Where I think especially in a lot of anime today, it's I awoken in a world and now I have all the superpower. I'm super powerful. This is much more of a story of the grind and what it takes for somebody who's the weakest to become the strongest. It's about somebody being given an opportunity and taking it for all he can. So awesome stuff, awesome visuals. I will say the second season of the anime has not disappointed either. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. I can't recommend it enough.
Cool. Up next for me, I'm going to go with Agatha All Along.
Fuck. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Hells yeah. Cool. I love that you're touching on these things that I also have on my list of things, and I'm just like, cool, let's talk about it.
Yeah, Agatha all along. I mean, like a lot of it is going to be. Yeah, I don't have anything on the anime front of things, so like the TV side of things, a lot of it is shows that we watched, for that D Plus show or something like that. Agatha all along, great. Kind of spiritual successor to WandaVision, which like WandaVision and Loki are easily the standouts of the Disney Plus shows for me from Marvel. And this was great. This was a ton of fun getting to see the the Witch's Road and the delving into like the magic world and the witchy world of Marvel through the eyes of the mysterious teen character and through Catherine Hahn's Agatha. I loved that the first episode kind of continues on in the tradition of WandaVision of like, all right, Wanda trapped Agatha in her own little spell, and so Agatha is stuck in a procedural cop show, a la The Killing or a la
True Detective.
True Detective, yeah, that kind of stuff, and like was a great carryover to kind of bridge the gap between WandaVision and this, and she breaks out of the spell, and then we go on the adventure here. Like incredible supporting cast with like Patti LuPone in there,
yes,
Sashir Zameda, Aubrey Plaza, just such a great crew to go on this like adventure with, and it very much does end up being like the it's almost like a Willy Wonka factory kind of situation of like, okay, you're going on these challenges, and people are getting picked off one by one. And I love, especially, not getting into spoilers or anything like that, but the twists that you get at the end of the season, the last couple episodes, that kind of like recontextualize everything that came before in a fascinating way, I thought. Just incredible, masterful storytelling, especially the standout episode for me is still very much the Patti LuPone like showcase episode.
Yes.
Where we got to see kind of like her existing out of time, and then seeing like moments that had happened earlier in the series, kind of playing through them sequentially for her perspective, in just a way that made me appreciate that this show, unlike far too many shows that try and do the serialized thing, had a game plan going into it. They knew, here are moments in each of these episodes that are going to be directly tied to these, beats in this, fifth, sixth episode, wherever it was in the season. And it didn't feel like it was, writing to like make up for something that they got, like a seed that got planted, but they didn't really have an idea for where it was going to go, so they just kind of made it up as they went. No, they knew where they wanted to take this story from the jump, and I think they do a great job with it. It has left me the most excited that anything had for what will seemingly be like the culmination of this in the Vision Quest series that we're going to get, kind of following the White Vision that got introduced in WandaVision. Whenever that hits, that's going to seemingly be the like third in this ongoing series from this showrunner and the creative team behind WandaVision and Agatha all along here. And for a show about a E-tier character in the Marvel universe that's never had their own thing, that really like is just a breakout because Catherine Hahn was so great in the series, and the Lopez's gave her an incredible banger of a theme with the Agatha All Along jingle. They surprised me in terms of like, this was like when it got announced, I was like, why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense. But for it to reach the heights that the WandaVisions and Lokis of the MCU did was just a ton of fun.
Yep, and outstanding cast, outstanding set direction on that show is insane. The
fact that especially I went and watched the making of, which I think they just put on like YouTube. They didn't do it on Disney Plus, but the Witch's Road entirely practical, and like they built the whole thing on a grandiose set that like a lot of it's completely you're not going to catch it on screen, but like the leaves on the ground, you know, change color depending on what trial they're going to, and they shot it in like different areas so that they could kind of have a, you know, everything looks a little bit the same, but like this is a different part of the road that we're on. So yeah, the practicality of this show in a era of the MCU that has sometimes become too ballooned with CG, or in the volume or something like that. This just had a tangible feel to it in a way that a lot of the others hadn't.
The only thing I can think of, like to the scale that I can think of, like right off the top of my head, that isn't like a Christopher Nolan joint, would be Dagobah in Empire Strikes Back. Kind of like if you ever watched the behind the scenes stuff for that, the Dagobah set is like was like a real set,
a real swamp, with real critters in it.
Yep. That by the end of it, the water was awful and terrible and toxic. Yeah, this is the closest thing we've ever gotten to that kind of like that scale and majesty of like a real set being used on this like scale and level and depth to it. So massive shout out to them. Also massive shout out to just like the Easter eggs abound inside of it. And bringing in characters that I never thought we'd ever get after WandaVision. Blown away by it and like their use of it and everything they're doing with it. I love it to death. I can't speak highly enough of it. Also, Aubrey Plaza, absolutely killing it in this show. Did not expect such a like great establishment of the character that she plays. Just amazing, tremendous work from her.
Yep. All right. What's next on your list?
Next on my list, I'm trying to think here. I only have, so this is I have 3 more anime things I'm going to hit on here, but the next one I'm going to talk about is Too Many Losing Heroines. I cannot talk too much about this one because it's massive spoilers for it, but basically this is like an anti-romance anime.
You talk, I'm going to go grab a tissue to blow my nose.
You got it. Directly to the audience. Here we go. All right. So audience, this is...
Who you're talking to anyway.
I know. So audience, this is an anime that is an anti-romance anime. And what I mean by that is it is a story about a young boy, a young guy who, and they're in high school, but this young guy who ends up kind of collecting a group of women in a way that like normally when you talk about that with anime, it gets into the realm of harem. This is very anti-harem. Because the collection of women around him are the girls who have lost in a love triangle. And what I mean by that is Too Many Losing Heroines is literally about a guy who becomes friendship, has become kind of like the emotional fall guy for these 3 gals who have all faced the rejection. They like, if this was another anime, it would be specifically about like this love triangle. And what the first episode starts off with is this is a guy that likes to read light novels. He likes to read these classic romance books, and he just sees the red flags popping up in all of these young gals' routes of their life, and just sees like, you are like, this is a losing heroine. This is a losing, like she's losing, she's going to lose. And him finding himself kind of being the best friend to these gals. And the thing that's interesting is the big quote unquote confession scene that happens is done in a very practical, but also very funny way of doing it. Because this isn't about him falling in love with any of these women. It's him becoming friends with them and building a community and friendship circle with these gals that just, happen to have lost in their competition of love. And it's done in such a really incredible way that it captures your heart in just amazing, amazing moments. I'll put it this way, is if the first episode does not get you like invested in what's going on and what kind of story this is, it's not going to be for you. This one's not going to be for everybody, but it is just one of my favorite animes of the season. And I love the direction they're going with it. It's very much the antithesis of what you would expect out of like a slice of life high school romance anime. So awesome stuff.
Cool. I did more or less hear what you were talking about from the other.
Because I'm so loud.
Yeah, a little bit. Cool. Next up for me, I'm going to shout out Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy.
You were so hot on this. I was less hot on it, honestly.
Yeah. So. I mean, like as the Lego guy, This being like Lego Star Wars What If, basically, was a lot of fun, and we got to see, things like Darth Jar Jar, or we got to see, the Jedi Darth Vader and stuff like that. We got to see a lot of like the allegiances switch in this new, broken up kind of remixed galaxy. And there's just a lot of fun to be had there. And I love that. I wrote about it in one of my whenever my Lego list goes up. One of my favorite sets of the year was the Dark Falcon, because it's a fun twist on the Millennium Falcon Lego design. But then you also, you get Darth Jar Jar, you get Darth Ray, you get Beach Bum Luke.
Beach Bum Luke was great.
And there were still like, there were constants in between the galaxies. So like you still had like a Twin Suns moment. And the Twin Suns moment in this was looking at a couple lights in a trash compactor set or something like that. But still a lot of fun, and just a love letter to Star Wars fans, a love letter especially to Lego fans, where like the whole Jedi Bob character is a like inside joke among the Lego community of a Jedi from a set, back in like the Attack of the Clones era.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Republic trooper ship gets, released as like a Lego set, and it has a Jedi who's just kind of a nondescript Jedi, and the community started referring to him as Jedi Bob. And then he like gets canonized in a, visual dictionary book of Lego as Jedi Bob. And now he's here in this series as Jedi Bob, and got his own little starship and stuff like that. So, because and he's also like Barbarius Afal, I think, was his last name. Or like, I don't remember what his first name was, but his last name being Afal, aka adult fan of Lego. Absolutely just a right up my alley in terms of hitting on all cylinders for the Lego love that they put into this one. So shout out to Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy as like the annual, hey, we're gonna do a fun little Lego Star Wars thing. A couple years ago they did the like summer vacation, they did the Terrifying Tales little Halloween special. They did the Lego Star Wars holiday special a few years back. This was just kind of like, hey, like they do once a year a fun little Lego Star Wars thing that has a lot of the great humor of the Lego, side of the world in the galaxy far, far away, and playing on, a lot of the tropes and conventions there. So, Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, fun little nugget of a Disney Plus thing that we did this year. Hit me with your next anime.
All right, my next anime, this one is Kaiju number 8. Kaiju number 8 is a Shonen Jump, I believe it's monthly or bi-weekly release in its comic form. However, why I'm bringing it up is because the anime came out this last year and it was absolutely stellar. Kaiju number 8 is in a world with giant monsters. There are, in Japan, is the Monster Extermination Squad, which is basically using high-powered weapons and technology to take down giant monsters. And then there's the giant monster cleanup squads, like little industry businesses that have popped up and are basically just there to clean up monsters and like dissect them, take them into pieces, and dispose of them.
It's the Michael Keaton crew from Star Wars or from Spider-Man: Homecoming.
100%. The story is about two childhood friends, Kafka Hibino and Mina Ashiro, who both vow to become members of the Japanese Anti-Kaiju Defense Force. And basically, that's when they're children. And then what ends up happening with them is Kafka never succeeds in the test. He fails enough that he basically starts working as a monster disposal. Meanwhile, his friend Mina, she becomes a famous, countrywide, national celebrity famous, monster kaiju hunter, head of an entire division of them. And this is the story basically about how a man in his 30s is going to try to recapture his dream. As somebody in his 30s who has been trying to capture dreams, especially like with work and everything going the way that it has this year. It already was speaking to me before with the manga. The anime came out at just the right time to be like, you know what? It's still worth trying to do something and going for things even if it doesn't work out. And things didn't work out for me last year in a lot of ways, but didn't stop me from trying. I never gave up. This is one of those things that was like a cathartic thing there for me when I was thinking about like, why do I even try anymore? After getting, the upteenth rejection email from a job, just getting like applying for a job and getting an automatic email saying, hey, you're not qualified. Like, we don't want you. You might be qualified, but we don't want you for this job. And it's like already, there was a lot of rejection last year. And so something like this was a bit of an inspiration to just, even in a little way, just keep on going. It's an incredible anime that is, and really the thing that sets it up is after a cleanup job kind of goes awry, he is invaded by a mini little kaiju that turns him into a kaiju. Not just a kaiju, but a powerful one that is designated. He's basically the 8th one of these kaiju that are like a disaster level kaiju. It's called kaiju. So he's the eponymous.
Titular.
Thank you, titular.
Kaiju number 8.
Yeah, kaiju number 8. And it's him trying to balance being a monster with trying to be somebody who kills these monsters. And kind of like the greater mystery to the kaiju overall is held in this relationship he has with his kaiju part, like that part of himself. So, really cool stuff. Highly check it out. It's at a point right now, especially in the manga, that is like, it's electric. It's one of those things that I caught up on because of the anime. Getting kind of like at the end of the anime, I'm like, I just need more of this. And so I went back and started reading where I originally left off, and am current up again with it. So awesome stuff. Highly suggested. Well, this is one of the ones that has like just banger animation, banger music, just awesome from beginning to end. An awesome show.
Eponymous would have also been correct.
Thank you.
So I'm going to jump over. I've got like a couple more TV shows, but maybe you'll give them some love. So I'm going to switch over temporarily to podcasts. And I don't listen, like, as somebody who, like, obviously we record podcasts, a couple podcasts a week. I don't find myself listening to podcasts all that often, especially like not like new podcasts or throwing new podcasts into the mix. But I want to give a shout out to the Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast that started up this last year and is basically the Lonely Island and Seth Meyers going back and revisiting every Lonely Island short of their SNL era, kind of week by week, starting from the beginning. Then they do, they'll do a random episode where they're like, hey, and in between these seasons, we were working on the movie Hot Rod, so now we're going to do a couple episodes talking about Hot Rod instead. And it's great chemistry among that group as somebody who's been a fan of the Lonely Island since their, early SNL days, and even like at the time went and like would find their like Awesome Town sketches and stuff that they from their failed pilot before SNL. Just cool getting to kind of hear their insight. And Seth Meyers is one of the people I have grown to appreciate, certainly from his time in the late night space, especially. But yeah, him kind of jumping in and like because they don't only reflect back on like the short, they reflect back on the sketches from that given episode and the fun behind the scenes stories with the guests of the episode or the musical guests or stuff like that. And then also because in this last season, they had new shorts for the first time because Andy Samberg was out there doing the show to be on as Kamala Harris's husband, Doug. Like he was around and they basically like released a couple new shorts for maybe a future Lonely Island album or something like that. So getting it was like a fun mix of getting to hear kind of like classic Lonely Island stuff and going back and like rewatching a lot of those old shorts with each week. And then getting kind of the, modern day, like here's the new things we did. And here's, the Here I Go with Charlie XCX short that they did. And they talk about that because it's fresh on everybody's mind. And let's not wait, 8 years to talk about this when admittedly, and they will even say like, they feel bad sometimes because they'll be like, I don't really remember, any details about this shoot or, and they're almost as surprised sometimes as others of like, wait, this aired? Like, I kind of have vague memories of shooting it. I didn't think anybody ever saw this thing.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's just a fun behind the scenes, especially in a year that also gave us the Saturday night movie. And celebrating obviously SNL's 50th anniversary. It's just a really cool SNL behind the scenes from a particularly high point era of the show, where pretty much everybody on the show was a star or has gone on to be a star. Least of all the Lonely Island crew, and kind of all the success that they've found in the years since. So yeah, shout out to the Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast as like a new weekly ritual. I throw that on and listen to it Mondays when it airs, and just enjoy whatever short they're talking about that week, and thinking back to because a lot of it is also like thinking back to the early, this is early YouTube eras when they were doing these shorts, and some of these shorts end up being very instrumental in terms of SNL having a presence on YouTube, or YouTube blowing up in the way it does. Like going back to the Lazy Sunday or Natalie Rapp being like these incredible breakthrough moments for the Lonely Island, for SNL, for YouTube, where it was we put it up on the the NBC app where you could watch it, but everybody somebody else put it up on YouTube, and everybody was watching it on YouTube, and you saw the explosion of popularity that they had because of that, and because this was a place you could find these things on YouTube. So there's also just this weird little internet history nature to the show in a very fascinating way. So shout out to Lonely Island, Seth Meyers podcast. It's just a fun little weekly routine that I've thrown into my my mix.
I'm glad that you have.
Yep. Hit me with your next thing.
My next thing is going to be the last anime that I'm going to talk about, which is Dan to Dan. Dan to Dan is an anime that came out late last year. Took the internet by storm. This is Mappa Studios, which is a very infamous. I have one more anime to do as well, I believe. Sorry about that. Sorry, and this isn't Mappa at all. It's Science Sorry. What am I saying? I'm getting myself confused with one of the other things that I forgot to add to my initial list that I just realized I need to.
Of course, you're going to have more anime.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, so
Cameron's list, 90% anime.
Pretty much, almost always. When it comes to... Actually, no, I don't think I will be talking about that one because I don't think this stuff came out this year. I'm wrong. I will double check on that. But in the meantime, it didn't come out. It came out in 2023. I don't know why I thought it was doing that. Anyway, back to my original point of what I was originally talking about, which is when it comes to Dan to Dan being produced by Science Saru, put out its full season already. It's going to be picking back up later this year with its second season. Dan to Dan is an anime that, once again, is I feel like we're seeing a deeper resurgence of 80s, 90s anime tropes that have kind of been put out to pasture for such a long time, being kind of having their own resurgence in a lot of ways. This feels, especially with its supernatural / science fiction take on what would happen if, the author is somebody who has been trying to break into the manga anime industry for such a long time, to the point where they were just producing storyboard stuff and just trying to find an interesting concept to draw because their art already was spectacular. And come in with the idea of what would happen if somebody who's obsessed with conspiracy theories like aliens and stuff like that, Nessie, etc., on that kind of sci-fi side of things, met somebody who believed in ghosts and traditional folklore monsters. And kind of what if they challenged each other to go to a specific location, and then it turns out both sides are true. That's the basic premise. You have Momo Ayase, who is a little bit of a gyaru, which is a gal, which is somebody who is a bit obsessed with a very specific subgenre of fashion in Japan. And she ends up befriending a character named Ken Takakura, who shares a name with a very, very popular Yakuza movie actor, who has a particular line, he has a particular line. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. Trying to figure out what it was. Anyway, that's not what's important. What's important is that this is a thing that he does not know when he's introduced to Momo Ayase, is that she specifically is looking for men like this actor. The first episode starts with her breaking up with her boyfriend who was treating her poorly. And when her friends ask you, hey, why did you go out with him? She goes, because he looked like Ken Takakura, the actor. And at the very end of the first episode, after everything's happened, she finds out that this guy that she was like kind of bullying and being mean to, his name is Ken Takakura, and he uses the catchphrase of that actor unbeknownst to her, like unbeknownst to himself. And so she freaks out about it and falls in love with him. And it's kind of a story of how their budding romance with just the massive miscommunication that happens with teenagers, but also him being possessed by a ghost and her developing psychic abilities to like basically the ghost girl becomes a psychic, like has psychic abilities of telekinesis, and the like conspiracy theory alien boy becomes possessed by like a ghost. And so it's kind of the story of their life and their romance kind of taking off in its own very, very unsubtle way of kind of like, they're both clearly have feelings for each other, but it's just their mishaps going into it. I will also say that I will put out like a bit of a, not really a trigger warning, but like a little bit of one where like this is telling a very teenage story. And so there's times when stuff happens that like this show has some stuff going on that a lot of people would say would fall into fan service, except for the fact it's sort of anti-fan service. So when characters end up in their underwear or naked, it's not treated as this like hubba hubba, oh my gosh thing. It's like, oh, this is a really embarrassing moment for this character. And it's played for a little bit of laughs, but also like trauma and horror of like, no, it's horrible to just be down into your underwear or just be stripped naked. And aliens want to harvest your reproductive organs.
It's very weird that I pull up the plot on Wikipedia and the first thing my eye is drawn to, because it links to another page, is the overarching plot themes include retrieval of so-and-so's penis and testicles.
That does happen. Yeah, that does happen.
And the
His
development of romantic feelings between characters. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's an overall plot theme so much as like that's a thing that happens.
It ends up being one.
Okay, well, that's fucking weird. And
when the boy's possessed,
you are weird, and anime people are weird. Yep. This is why I do not do anime.
The old granny's ghost steals the boy's junk.
Is this the granny character that has like the hair that's just like straight up?
Yes, she's not the granny spirit. She's the Momo Ayase's grandmother.
I've seen cosplayers doing that character kind of thing.
Hot granny is a thing. Yeah. She's there. She's awesome. She's an awesome character. She exorcises creatures by hitting them with an exorcist bat.
Sure.
Yep. Listen, it's a very weird anime and a very weird show, beautifully like animated in such a great way. But it's weird as hell. And like this is the weird one. All right. Out of all the animes I talked about, like, oh, this one is just a lot of weird stuff because guess what? The subject matter is weird. The occult, conspiracy theories, aliens, mole people, all this stuff gets brought up into it. And like it's not just, oh, it's regular people dealing with this. It's like very like heavy animated caricatures of teenage characters that are just like dealing with that. While love is blooming and blossoming between these two characters. So yeah, it's awesome. It's an awesome anime. It's an awesome manga, but it's weird as hell. And if you don't want to deal with weird as hell stuff, I totally get it. Yeah. When I said not like trigger warning, I'm like, that's what I'm trying to say. This is weird as hell.
Yeah. My next thing, I don't want to have a ton to discuss on because it's a thing again with going to podcasts. I just don't often have the time to sit down and do podcasts or. Especially if it's not a video version of a podcast. I just tend to not gravitate towards it as much. But Worlds Beyond Number, I did, when I would drive to and from Disneyland on my little road trip back around my birthday as last year, like I caught up on whatever arc, they were up to at that point, and had a great time with that. They, I believe, are like another arc or two. Like I'm still like a full arc behind, if not two. And I believe they're moving away from the Umora storyline to go do another, like, I think
Cool.
Abria is going to start kind of spinning up a story that they're going to do for
All
a
right.
while, and then they'll go back to Umora eventually down the line. But yeah, just continuing to like the for a podcast only thing, especially the audio design is so like that's the thing that jumps out to me when I think of Worlds Beyond Number is Taylor Moore's audio design that goes into to help flesh out the narrative wonder that Brennan's putting forth, and that his collaborators Abria and Lou and Erica, they add their own flavor to the world. And the audio design just supplements it because we don't have like visuals to go with anything. And so yeah, shout outs to Worlds Beyond Number. It's definitely something it is to what you were talking about earlier with Critical Role. It's the opposite of Critical Role in that like each episode's, maybe an hour kind of thing. They keep it on a, tighter timeline, and they, they edit out a lot of like the dice rolls or the time. They'll say like, give me a roll, and then we hear the number of the roll, and it's not like the long drawn out like doing the math kind of stuff. They definitely keep it more concise in that regard. But it definitely is one of those I'm like I just can't get it into my like regular routine to catch, but when I do, it's definitely like when I have a flurry where I'm like I'm gonna just sit down and throw this on and catch up on like 5 episodes in a row. It's an incredibly engrossing story that has a lot of great parallels to some of the other worlds that Brennan and Abria have like created. I think there's a lot of cool ideas and cool joy to it. So shout out to Worlds Beyond Number. What's your next item?
My next one, this one is something that you learned about me this year, is I enjoy a show called Forged in Fire.
Sure.
Watched a lot of Forged in Fire during my it actually started before unemployment. It started mostly with my weird splits. Well, I was watching it anyway, just throughout the year. Just was something that I was watching. It was something I found YouTube clips of. Fell into that rabbit hole. They were starting to put full episodes out on their YouTube channel. And just a lot of fun seeing people like, I've enjoyed blacksmithing videos over the years. The blacksmithing competition of Forged in Fire is still an ongoing thing. I think it's in 9 seasons now. It's a pretty stellar show. It's a very simple concept. You bring in a handful of competitors to fulfill a challenge of making like a signature knife out of materials that they give you as a challenge. You have, I think a grand total of like 5 hours to put this thing together, which is already a difficult, if almost impossible task, depending on the materials they give you. And you get to see really who is and who is not the best forge master there, best blacksmith. And then, of course, they get to create something from history, whether it's a sword, knife, or item. And it really helps these blacksmiths go home. And it's all for $10,000. It's all for 10 G's. It's not like a crazy amount of money. It's a significant change. Like, it could change your life depending on like what you do for a living. 10 grand is a lot of money for a lot of people. So getting the opportunity for 10 grand, even if it's just they're upgrading their, like if they're a professional knife maker and they're upgrading their services by getting some equipment, or if it's like I'm taking my wife on vacation and we're just going to enjoy it, stuff like that, or husband, because there are other competitors out there. It's a solid show. I can't recommend it enough. A lot of fun, and just one of those History Channel shows that I think are like, we're going to give you a basic premise, it's going to deliver on it, and we're going to be able to reiterate it over and over and over again as much as we want. And so as long as the audience is there, we're going to keep doing it. So
real quick in that vein, I didn't throw it on my list, but this was the year I got into like Taskmaster like YouTube videos.
Me too.
Like watching a ton of those and just seeing various like silly tasks over the years and stuff. Or like, because it'd be like collections of like, here are times where the contestant attacked the Taskmaster or something like that, and it would just be silly things. And as somebody who had like heard of the show for a long time but hadn't really gotten into what it actually was, it was fun seeing like, oh, the creative tasks where like the answer is hidden in plain sight tend to be like my favorite versions of those tasks, but like so often people are like super focused on the one thing and just don't see that, you know, the forest through the trees kind of thing. So
It's how I know I'd be terrible at that show.
yeah, I like. I feel some of them I feel like I'd be really good at, and then others I'd just be like, I wouldn't even know where to start with something like this. Like, because there is some where I'm like, oh, I think I'd have like a fun outside the box approach to that idea. But then it's also like, but would I have it in that moment, you know, with the time constraints and all that stuff? You know, who knows? But yeah, shout out to your Forged in Fire love that, yeah, I would occasionally catch when I was trying to do dinner or something like that. I'll throw the last of my little podcast things in here. Our friends over at Kind of Funny, just giving them some the love. They are like, it's very much I dip in, dip out. You know, I don't always catch the Kind of Funny podcast, but if I see like they've got a topic that seems like it's something I'll be interested in, I'll check it out. Or Game Showdown certainly is probably the most like consistent thing of theirs that I would watch these days. But I love that they did the move to daily game casts so that they can just kind of do like, okay, here's the news on Games Daily, and now let's talk about some topic in games, whether that's an interview or a review or whatever. And again, it's you know, I'm not going to catch everything every day. In the same way, like I like the streams that they're doing just aren't for me. That's not why I, you know, would be watching something. But I love that they do have an audience, and that audience has kind of grown with them and is helping them kind of do new things. So shout out to our friends over at Kind of Funny, and just the fun that they continue to have as they now enter their 10th year. So yep, that's my next item. You want to tack on with any of your Kind of Funny love, or do you want to just dive into your next thing?
No, I will definitely dive into some Kind of Funny love here. This was a year where like Kind of Funny, I feel like was firing on all cylinders, whether it's like some really great streaming moments. Shout out to the Jabroni boys. Whether it was just some really stellar overall content.
I'm wearing my 10-year anniversary.
You are wearing your 10-year anniversary shirt. It was a year of a lot of triumph for them, I think. And a year that also just had a lot of tragedy when it comes to just the games industry overall. Like just the layoffs of 2023, the hauntings of those layoffs continued on through 2024. You know, I can only imagine, as somebody who got let go from 2 jobs last year, you know, and understanding like the reasons why and everything like that, it still doesn't make this work, like looking for work, any easier. Seeing the love that they had, the kind of like community rallying around and like making, you know, seeing people in the extended community outside of it, like the people who were in the industry who were best friends, kind of like putting their names out there, trying to find work, was a little heartbreaking, but also very encouraging to see that people still love games this much. They still want to do, you know, they still want to produce games, make games. This was a year where we, like, you know, games kind of had like some wild swings. We talked about it on our Game of the Year podcast. So I think Kind of Funny being a place where really hammering out the Games Daily format the way that they did, bringing the Games Cast every like 5 days a week now, helping it stay like on topic and like focused. And then also just their overall streaming work, like their afternoon streams, having some real fun with those. And whether it's, you know, a new game or just Warzone shenanigans, it's just always been fun to have something going on in the afternoon and like late morning, early afternoon. So.
Shout out especially to the Nick Nuzlocke.
Nick Nuzlocke was awesome. It was
series.
So good.
That was a fun, and just the creativity that went into that from Andy and all the work that he put into that. I didn't like, because again, I'm not the kind of person that's going to sit down and watch like Let's Plays and stuff like that. But the clips I would see of the, you know, oh, there's Snowbike Mike, he's a bug catcher now. And just the silly little inside jokes that they were able to put into that leaves me incredibly excited for the same reason. Again, I probably won't actually watch it, you know, live as it's going out there, but the fact that they're doing a sequel Nuzlocke this year with the gold silver ROMs is just going to be more and more fun.
I've been talking to Andy about it. He streamed some stuff and I've talked to him about it a little bit. this next one's a lot harder to do.
Oh yeah. He said as much in their 10-year stream.
Yeah. This one's going to be a lot harder to produce and make happen, but it's something that they want to capitalize on and do. So I would say that don't expect the like strong level of customization that we got for a lot of the surprise pop-ups with, unless Andy finds a way to make it more efficient. Talking with him about and like helping him find tools, just in communication with him and being like, hey, maybe check out this map editing tool and stuff like that has been. I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm also like wanting to put out there temper expectations because it probably will not be the same on that level of depth. So,
yeah. All right. What's your next item?
My next item is going to be a book called Iron Widow. Iron Widow is a book that I found through TikTok years ago. It came out years ago. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the, here we go. Iron Widow. The name of the author is, let's see here. Jiren J. Zhao. Jiren J. Zhao is a Canadian writer who basically took the historical true story of China's only empress and turned it into a sci-fi, Pacific Rim meets Chinese mythology and Chinese history kind of mashup, and delivers a, bordering on like a very strong feminist manifesto about the kind of like historical subservience that women in ancient Chinese culture suffered through, and does not shy away from any of the brutality of it and the value that women have had in that society. She does an amazing job of capturing a like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That it is captured beautifully in her writing. I'm very excited for the sequel book that's come out. That is, and it's on its way out. That is about just a sequel to the original story and kind of delving deeper into kind of the greater like lore of her world that she's built.
Just a quick correction. I believe they use they, them.
Sorry, they, them. My apologies.
Used per footnote on there. You're on Wikipedia.
Thank you for correcting me on that. Of course, here we respect people's pronouns. They are phenomenal. I've been following them on TikTok and like Instagram and Twitter for years. And like bought their book when it first came out, and just like it's just been on my backlog because I needed to finish Wheel of Time. Which spoilers will be like my next shout out that I'll get to. But this one is more recent. I devoured this book in like 2 or 3 days. It's one of those books that I think really stands out as being fantastic. If you enjoy, I would say it's like young adult, but an older young adult like genre. It does deal with, themes that are sexual in nature. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a great book. Highly suggest it.
Cool. Next up for me, I'm going to move over into the like live events theater space and shout out the Across the Spider-Verse concert that we went to, sequel to our prior year's Into the Spider-Verse event, getting to basically see the movie but with a live orchestra playing the soundtrack and the score. While I probably still prefer Into the Spider-Verse as a better movie, I think the score of Across the Spider-Verse, in particular, I love the Gwen Stacy score. And if I had a Spotify Wrapped kind of thing, like the Guggenheim Assemble number of the Guggenheim sequence is probably easily the thing that I've played most on my phone in the last 5 years. And so getting to see that played live with the movie was an incredible ton of fun. I think we talked about it at the time, like the improvements that they'd kind of had from concert to concert in terms of like, hey, the movie has the subtitles this time around. So you're not, so if that's how you want to consume movies, which is often how I consume movies, in the home, loved that was there for us, this time around. And it just also had like a all around general fun vibe. There were, a few cosplay girls, sitting in front of us, this time around, who were decked out in their, Spider-Gwen or Miguel outfits and stuff like that. And, we weren't as much in a time crunch this time around as well. That was a nice, thing going for us. So, it was just a a fun experience that was not bogged down by some sort of like, Major League Baseball game or something, whatever it was that fucked us the year earlier.
Yeah.
In terms of like,
Parking,
traffic's a nightmare, and parking sucks and everything. This is just fun iteration of the live orchestra concert movie experience. So yeah, I'll throw it back over to you.
Sure. I think this might be my last one. Want to talk about Wheel of Time, the book series. This is, of course, the legendary book series written by Robert Jordan, finished by Brandon Sanderson after Robert Jordan's passing from cancer. This is one of those big, like, quote unquote, nerd homework series that people talk about like, you got to read this book, but it's 13 of them. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to take in. I started my first time reading The Wheel of Time, Eye of the World, back in 2010. Finished the first 2 books, started the third, never went back to it for years until about 2020, 2021, when I was a substitute teacher. And being a substitute teacher, my job was to make sure kids weren't on their phone. So me being on the phone would have been extremely hypocritical. So I would never be on my phone. I would always just have a book. And that kind of became my, like, okay, I'll pick it back up. And I read through almost all of them, and I had just the last couple books to go. This time through unemployment, I was substitute teaching again and needed kind of that go-to again. Luckily, I was able to start borrowing those books from my brother-in-law, John, who we played D&D with, and just had an amazing time finishing up that series this year, or this past year, and just like, putting that to bed, ending that series, being good with it, like being like, okay, I'm good with it. It's done. The ending was the ending. Like, I had no idea how it was going to end, but I enjoyed what I enjoyed out of it. Robert Jordan was able to build a world and build a cast of characters that were compelling and wonderful, and just truly a spectacular delivery by Brandon Sanderson to help finally deliver this work in a way that I think Robert Jordan would be proud of. So can't speak highly enough of the series. It's fantastic, but it is massive, and it's a monumental task to try to take forward. The season 2 of the show I haven't caught yet. Season 3 is coming out this year. My opinion about season 1 from a few years ago was like, it's fine. It's not nearly as good as the books, but few things could be with the scope and breadth that Robert Jordan captures worlds with in the written word. So, also suffered from like some very late pandemic issues, because they were filming at the very beginning of the pandemic, or they ended filming at the very beginning of the pandemic. So there's some struggle there with that. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I know I have a couple items on my TV list that you could talk about. So I'll throw one out your way. Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Fantastic.
That was a fun little series that we had. Kicking off the 2024 year. Enjoyed kind of the time we had with that. Looking forward to whenever that comes back for its season 2. Let's see, X-Men 97 was another one on the TV side of things that obviously was a fun, how's this going to work? Are they going to nail the nostalgia of the original X-Men animated series? And they absolutely do, and they ran with it, and that wowed us kind of at every turn, while also telling stories very relevant to today. Back in the live theater side of things, I'll give a little bit of love to the Back to the Future musical that I got to see when I went to DC for work. Back to the Future being one of my favorite movies of all time, getting to see the musical version of that, ton of fun. The songs themselves don't really do a ton for me, but just the opening score of the diddle-doo, diddle-doo, beginning, from the beginning little riffs, I was hooked and in, and it hit on all of the Back to the Future nostalgia things. It also switches up the story in a few interesting ways, notable and interesting ways, to kind of meet the let's say limitations of the live stage. Notably, hey, instead of Libyans chasing Doc Brown around and shooting him. Doc gets his radiation suit just needs has a hole in it basically, and he starts to die of radiation poisoning, and that's what Marty basically goes back to and tells him to hey, make sure you got a new suit kind of thing, or they don't do a chase around Hill Valley on a skateboard and Biff driving into a truck of manure. They chase they do a foot chase around the school and through the locker rooms and stuff like that. Basically, adapting to meet the limitations of, hey, yeah, we can't do a full blown car chase on stage kind of thing. But having the DeLorean, driving around the set and eventually, flying at the end of the show, still incredible fun spectacle to it. And yeah, overall a very fun, nostalgic time through Back to the Future. Similarly, I went and saw Waitress, the musical, at Phoenix Theater late in the year, in large part because a friend of mine was the main person. I went into it having never seen the Waitress movie or the musical, or listened to the musical, but I'd heard good things about it. I knew Sarah Bareilles kind of was a notable performer in it on the Broadway version, and I believe that's been recorded and will be released if it hasn't been released on some streaming service somewhere down the line. Anyway, but yeah, my friend Cassie, who I knew back when I would do theater stuff, was the lead in it, and so getting the marketing materials from Phoenix Theater with her, with the pie, was just fun throughout the year. So yeah, I wanted to go give some support to her. And yeah, it was a fun show. Definitely a little tropey, and didn't completely blow me away in the way that some performances I've seen there have, but she was great, and there are definitely some okay, these are the standout numbers. I get why this has made waves. So yeah, it was a fun, as somebody who has unfortunately been priced out of a lot of live theater stuff and just doesn't get to see as much theater as I did back in my heyday. Making the occasional trip out to go and support people I knew in the community and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. I've got one or two more things, but I want to throw it to you in case anything else has popped up.
For me, no, I don't really have anything else that I would want to kind of touch on necessarily. I nothing that came to mind, but I have no doubt that I have some commentary on some stuff that you've picked up on.
Last couple things in the TV space. My annual shout outs to the Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, John Oliver, political late night stuff. Always love catching their shows and a closer look, or the monologues, or John Oliver's stories and stuff like that. The deep dives. They certainly help keep me sane and in these incredibly frustrating times. The trio of little Star Wars things we got last year in Bad Batch Season 3, Tales of the Empire, and The Acolyte. Various levels of hit and missery among the three of them, but overall good fun. Some good fun stories. Bad Batch Season 3 is somebody who'd kind of been following that along since the beginning. It was fun to see that story kind of come to its close. Even if it never hit the heights that the Clone Wars or Rebels did. Still a solid little crew there.
For The Acolyte, I guess I would want to just touch on the fact that I think it has some of the best lightsaber fighting we've seen in a very long time. Sure. I love the introduction of Corderus to, live action Star Wars canon, with the helmet made of it and the kind of the wrist blades or wrist bracers and stuff like that. It is a very fun look at, and that overall, that show, I think there were some misses on it. Absolutely. Definitely had one of the things you hate the most, which is lightsaber sound and then cut off sort of ending to an episode, but
The faux cliffhanger.
yeah, the faux cliffhanger. I really appreciated and loved it for what it was. I think that it had a lot of potential to be bigger and better than it ended up being. Especially for fans, it just didn't captivate the numbers audience wise that Disney Plus was hoping it would. And then on top of that, just dealing with the backlash of just insecure man children not being able to handle like a black woman as the lead. Extremely frustrating, especially in a year that was extremely frustrating like 2024 was when it comes to a lot of those aspects and a lot of those things. But overall, just a very big, awesome time to be a Star Wars fan for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And for me, Acolyte was one of those.
My penultimate item is going to be just the travel I got to do last year. Again, my kind of annual sojourn out to Disneyland, always a fun time. But then this time also getting to go for work and then kind of getting to stay for a little week afterwards. Going to DC, Washington, DC. Especially as like somebody who at one point strongly had considered like trying to get into politics or kind of like going down a political path or something like that. Getting out there and walking around the mall and kind of getting to see all these historical sites and going to like the Smithsonian. The biggest disappointment of the DC stuff was how much was like under construction or, like under construction with the like caveat of like, we're remodeling stuff in honor of the upcoming 250th anniversary, in 2026. It's like, okay, but why does half of the Air and Space Museum have to be completely closed off? Like, you walk in the building and it's like, okay, everything to the right of this central point of the building masked off and blocked off. So only stuff on you can only go to the left kind of thing was like, well, that's lame. I feel like I'm only getting half of the experience.
Yeah.
And so running into that in a few places was frustrating, but getting to see so much American history, getting to flip off the Supreme Court building was nice. Getting to flip off the Capitol building was nice. Getting to flip off the White House was nice.
Get a little physical venting of your frustration in our political system.
Yep,
Absolutely.
very much. The cost of the trip ended up being more than I was like expecting or wanting, and especially the like where my hotel was in relation to the National Mall meant that I was like, well, I'm really only going to make this like Uber trip once. So like pretty much packing in as much as I could in my like one day at the mall, and also trying to not get completely sunburnt from everything was definitely like an experience. But at least enough of it was walkable that I had a good time, and then basically gave myself the following day to like rest and recover and just play Stardew Valley on my Steam Deck.
There you go.
So, so shout outs to DC especially, but also my little annual Disneyland trip. And then the last one I have is just going to be our D&D adventure.
Sure.
Kind of closing on that. We had some fun times in our D&D journey this year, culminating at the end of the year with a big long 3-month liberation of slave rebellion kind of story arc where we basically had to battle our way through district by district of this town to kind of help support a rebellion that I inadvertently started when I used one of my high level spells to introduce resurrection into the world. And the kind of overthrow of power that I accidentally fomented made for gave you an opportunity to play with some new game mechanics that you were interested in playing with that absolutely were immediately a turnoff to me when you introduced them. I was like, I don't like that piece of this at all. But because the underlying thing meant just back-to-back battles for a long time. That was I was much more interested in engaging with that piece as opposed to the
It was clear, and by the end of it, we weren't really playing that overworld mechanic so much.
Yeah, and I think and part of that maybe was because we tactically in like that first session basically cut your map in half so people couldn't move as much as I think you were anticipating they were going to move.
I was anticipating a lot more movement. I was anticipating a lot more differences going on. But also, I realized it's like, hey, this is what it means to be a DM. Like, your best laid plans are going to go up in smoke, so just, pivot and deal with it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is, like, how and because I was like, hey, I'm not leveling you guys up for a while from 9 to 10, because that leap is a big leap. Yeah. And so I wanted, so I got to see you guys as players really flex the items. You guys are a 2-person party.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of magical items and a lot of strategy that you guys have to do to take on bigger groups of people, especially when I was throwing out some really strong, heavy units at you. Mm-hmm. There were moments where it's like, this might be the end of it. Like, you guys might end up with a casualty and die. But you guys always found a way to get out of it, whether it was just some lucky rolls. The mechanic I had that as long as the two of you were together, you guys had advantage. So distancing from a lot of disadvantaged situations, being just neutral.
Yeah, I was curious. Did you ever think we were going to split up and try and do solo fights?
I thought you might.
Okay.
I thought you might.
Because I couldn't imagine trying to go into any of those battles and doing them without a second person.
Well, it would have been at that point. It wouldn't necessarily be a battle as much as an engagement of how you wanted to take that on solo. Are you going to go stealth on this one or whatnot? Definitely was not I'm I shouldn't have thought that, because the two of you are heavily armored and just not great at stealth.
Yeah, stealth not our
neither of you are rogues. And John specifically is a heavy armor wearing bard.
Yeah.
And I'm now experimenting with doing what it means to do triple classing. So not just dual cast, a dual class system.
Yeah,
but introducing a third class to that.
He went from bard to bard fighter, and now bard fighter warlock.
Yep.
There's a fun little mix that whereas I've kept things simple and stayed cleric the whole time.
Honestly, I think that's why it works. Is also, I have never let somebody ever do that before. I also never had somebody that invested in dual class running. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it is a matter of, I've seen Brennan bring that into effect for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so getting to see that, I'm also going to let John, when he does the level up now, if he wants to move his levels around, I'm cool with that as well. Don't have an issue with that. So letting that kind of evolve the way it has is letting me also, now I get to flex as a DM, something I've never had to be concerned about before.
Yeah, it's also been interesting because I think his latest decision to move into warlock, I think, is largely driven by the story that we've kind of undergone more than any kind of mechanical benefits going to give him. Because jumping in at level 10 as a warlock on top of the bard and fighter stuff doesn't seem like it's really going to break in his favor. It seems like he's just everything ends up being a little bit weaker for him because he's basically been so non-committal to the class breakdown. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. He and we obviously we had talked about that being his the thing he's going to take at level 10 for a while now. So even back, I think when we were level 8, he was not this next level, but the level after that, I want to look at being a warlock. So during our level 9 run there, you planted seeds and you gave him the opportunity to kind of build out it was a slow build kind of thing.
It was a slow build through a lot of role play and a lot of exploration of the world, and what it meant to try to be specifically the kind of warlock that he wanted to be is flavored for the campaign. And so he's a pact of the fathomless, and it's being tied into this giant monster I introduced in the first session 1. Session 0, it wasn't involved. Session 0 was very much a character building session to kind of flesh you guys out. Session 1 is when I introduced the Leviathan creature, which is such a massive creature that your giant ship fit into the radius of its eye.
Yep.
It's an enormous creature that almost killed the two of you and killed everybody else on the ship, as kind of a fun setup of you're now stranded on this continent.
Yep.
And got you guys started on that aspect of it. So it was a lot of fun, introducing that creature and that idea, and then seeing John want to engage with that, is this something I can make a pact with? And I'm no, you can't make a pact with it, but where this thing is from, the greater realm that this thing is from and pulled from, and kind of a deeper look at kind of the complexity of a multi-dimensional facet of what, in my opinion, what it means for gods to exist. Gods don't exist on the same plane of existence as us. They exist on like they're like fifth dimensional creatures. They exist on an additional plane of existence as well. That's been my kind of my own personal belief about like what it means to be quote unquote a god for more than a decade now. And to kind of see, like, kind of put that into practice here in this campaign is a cool thing that I'm looking forward to. But what does that mean for a warlock? Not a cleric, a warlock. And what does it mean for John to pull into that aspect of that realm of depth? Like, you know, Pact of the Fathomless is a very unique pact, mostly meant for like seafaring campaigns. Pact of the Fathomless, I believe, is also in Mighty Nine, the second season of Critical Role.
Yeah,
one of the characters.
Ford's pact, I believe.
Yeah, he's a pact. He's a Hexblade pact of that, I believe. And so like, yeah, there's a whole thing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm expecting John to do for his pact feature when he gets to level 2 for Warlock. But one of the things I am interested in, and this is the thing too, if people are like, well, is he a bard and battle mat? No, he's a bard and an Eldritch Knight, which is not the quote unquote mechanically ideal combination you want for that. When I was digging into it and he's like, well, I'm going to be an Eldritch Knight. I'm like, why? And it's like, because it's these class features that he likes that he wants to incorporate into his character, which is why I'm trusting him to be triple multi-class.
Yeah.
If he was already with his dual multi-class, exploiting the 5th edition system, the way that a lot of people do with multi-classing, I would not consider that. Like, I would not have considered him also going into Warlock and like breaking it further. And that's the thing, his multi-classing is not breaking it. It is enhancing the flavor of his character as this kind of jack of all trades. And really, what does it mean to be a jack of all trades? Martially, spellcasting, and like magic tool and interaction wise. Like, he really has fleshed out this character in a very unique way to kind of be a reactive character of the world and not so much a proactive character. Whereas you do tend to be a bit more proactive in like what you're going to be doing, which is let me play a lot with like your character and the kind of outside of this content that I've created that you guys are playing in, kind of like outside of that lore, creating the nation state that both of you are technically from, and kind of the government around that, and everything has been fleshed out through your interaction with the world that you're currently playing in, being a reflection of the past of your character.
Yeah, a lot of the fun of the like little Civil War liberation dynamic that we did was like the factions that we were fighting, like 2 of them were more or less tied to like my backstory and one was tied to his. I mean, I guess technically I was also an Echo Valiant on the trip.
Technically,
over. So
yeah.
All 3 of them were tied to like my backstory in a degree.
And in a way, it's also tied to minimum 2 of them were always tied to both of your backstories.
Yeah.
Because both of you are citizens of the Dominion, which means the overarching government.
Yeah.
You having been a political figure, like we developed that. You were like, yeah, I'm a level 1 cleric, but I was the head of this main. Like we discussed this through role play and me asking you questions.
Yeah.
Something I think I want to always put out there for people if you want to like do a good session 0. Don't just go like, explain your character's backstory to me. Ask them weird questions. For example, what smell do you associate with your character?
Yeah.
That was a fun one. I came up with that one. You being like, I associate with like smoke and incense. And I'm like, ooh, let's get into that. And for him, it was like, kind of like the smell of travel and like the smell of like a storm on the horizon. Like what it means to like when water hits like dust and dirt and that kind of like, that smell that's developed out of that, as well as just the smell of sweat and what it means to travel and like the smell of like a sweaty, wet tavern. Really delving into like helping that flesh out his character as a performer and a folk hero, so to speak, or like a folk hero in progress. Like it's like I'm not a folk hero yet, but that is kind of like that's his overarching character arc is going to be what it means to become a folk hero and a person of legend.
Yeah.
And yours is really about like, what does it mean to like be part of a found family that is now broken apart by politics and strife? I revealed some really interesting stuff in the last like handful of role play sessions over the last few months that helped really flesh out kind of like the circumstances that led to your excommunication and exile were not as simple as the bad guys had it out for you.
Yeah.
And that makes things complicated and messy, which is where the good, I'm speaking to the camera right down the barrel here. What makes a good roleplay session is how messy you can make it for the player. The more scenery you give them, the more things you got, you let them just chomp down on it and eat it and make hams out of their characters. The drama is absent from all of John's stuff right now because John, as a player, does not necessarily engage with that, but you do. And I love that about you as a player.
The easily my favorite of the battles in our long, 3-month epic rebellion thing here was the one that we didn't win, and we basically had to retreat, which was like against one of the big bads from my backstory. One of my like adopted brothers, who's kind of like a big barbarian psychopath.
He's a Path of the Zealot
guy.
barbarian, and his zealotry is tied into like this weird oath of conquest that the rest of your order has taken.
Yeah. So like we encountered him. We'd been pretty good at being able to like take out, a couple fights, 2 or 3 fights, and then kind of need a long rest or something like that. And we'd taken like one fight before him, and then going in and being like, okay, it's just him, but like everything doing half damage against him, and him being able to like, not completely one shot us, but like pretty much if he had a couple lucky rolls, could take out either one of us in one turn.
I crit on one of you, and it was real bad.
Yeah, was very much like, okay, this isn't going to work. I used my last spell to manage somehow successfully to get a banishment on him, and basically said like, we gotta go.
Yeah,
because I'm tapped.
I warned you guys, hey, this is going to be a much more bigger fight. You guys might want to rest before. You guys are like, no, we're good. Which is always something you want to hear as a DM. Just like, okay.
I mean, I don't remember that being the way it played out.
It's not the way that it played out, but my perspective was I should give you guys like a bigger rest, and you guys were very much like, no, let's just do this next fight and then we'll rest. It's like, okay.
I mean, I guess that speaks more to the lineage of all the other fights.
Yeah.
Had been, of a level of a, challenge rating kind of, whatever, where, we were able to do 2 or 3 of those in one go and we'd be okay. And so this didn't seem like that was going to be any different. So, I don't remember you giving us like,
I didn't give you guys
this
big
is
hints.
going to be actually a super boss.
No, I didn't want to give you guys that hint because I wanted it to, because also this is me I built a pseudo monster block / character sheet for this kind of character. It's kind of like, this was a clue or like a first time, kind of like a beta prototype of something that I've been trying to do for characters in the story.
Yeah.
Because I don't like, for some of the monsters you fought, like the custom monsters I put together, it was me finding different monsters in the monster manuals to kind of like smash together and make like a very unique creature type for you guys to fight, whether that was the like dual cast. What does it mean when somebody can actually cast spells twice in their round? Mm-hmm. What does it mean when you have to deal with somebody who has like 3 different damage types that can like really mess you up in a very big way? And the way that you guys have handled those have been like kind of dangerous. Shout out to Dwarfamedes pulling out a handgun.
Sure.
I expected just to murder him outright in front of you guys, and then you didn't let him die in front of you. And I was like, well,
I cast Death Ward on him.
Yeah, you cast Death Ward on him, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is where we're going with it. Okay.
Yep.
And so I'm like, well, now he has to contribute, where before I was just going to have to get massacred by the monster.
Well, also, like, I rolled a nat 20 on a history check or something.
You did.
And that's why he, like, contributed in the first place at all.
At all, yeah.
But the thing I will say, when you were like, you guys aren't going to level up until this is done, I was like, holy shit. Because I would argue, and I had like a sticky note for every fight we did during that, and it was always like at least 1 or 2 fights per district kind of thing. I would argue we probably had more fights in that little mini arc than we've had the rest of the campaign combined.
Oh, for sure you have. Like that was something that definitely happened.
So the idea that like, up to level 9 was like everything else we'd done in the campaign, and then like 9 to 10 was like this. I felt like everybody in the 4th episode of Calamity waiting for the 1 second to tick over moment of like, wow, knowing that now, I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna see level 11. Like, I don't imagine that's ever going to happen in terms of like.
No, it will happen.
I mean, well, like, okay, maybe by this time next year we'll be at level 11.
No,
but, like,
I mean, I hate to break to you. That's how a lot of D&D campaigns actually are.
Like,
when they're running XP system,
and that. But like you also have like, oh, people can game the XP systems or something, and that like we've obviously been running much more of a milestone kind of like or storytelling. Like okay, like that's enough. I think we're ready to level up. So it is just it's the thing you don't like in video games where it's like, okay, I'm now grinding to a halt and it's going to take forever to get to the next level. In terms of,
I will say, let you know, 10 to 11 is going to be a lot shorter than it was 9 to 10.
Okay.
9 to 10, this is why I like milestone systems. This is why I like kind of it was originally put towards me, like I read it in 4th edition, and I really didn't care that it didn't carry over too much in 5th edition. It kind of has in a way that challenge ratings work, but the idea, like 4th edition's Dungeon Master book had kind of like a breakdown of like levels of like, what does levels mean for the kind of like adventurer you're dealing with. And by the time you got to 10th level, because this is back when they were still prestige classes and they introduced those at 10th level in 4th edition, it meant you were going from just like 1 to 5 is you're making your first steps out into the foray of the world and everything. And then levels 5 to 10 are you becoming those so-called, like you are becoming a legendary person in your class. And then that's what leads into prestige classes at level 10. 5th edition doesn't have those. 5th edition just goes off of just levels.
It does. It has a similar kind of vibe of like levels 1 through 4 are kind of like this level of, you know, where your place is in the world. 5 through 10 is the same. Because I looked at that after this thing. I looked up and found, I'm trying to pull it up now as we're talking. Like I don't remember if it's in the player's guide or if it's in the DM's guide. But it does have that similar kind of like,
yeah, it does.
Here's the bucket breakdown of things. And yeah, so it was it's the level 10 being at the end of one trunch versus like a level 11 being the next, where I was like, okay, I think that's like, I don't know where you're pulling your like stuff from. So hearing that it was similar in 4th edition to that is like, oh, okay, well, interesting.
It's how I like to run my games. Because I like to throw big challenges at players. I always want, and this is kind of like, it goes back to like the Dark Souls player in me. I want your moments of triumph to feel like moments of triumph. There were times when I gave you guys like what I thought would be tougher fights where you guys strategized the hell out of it and just gamed it and just won. And I'm happy for that. Like, cause that was you really putting in the work.
4th level hold person being able to lock down 3 warlocks all in one go.
Yep.
And we just kind of like critted it against them until they were dead.
You did what you needed to come out of that. But it was like, there's moments where I want your ingenuity and spell usage to really feel like a big win for you. And then there's going to be times where I want you to feel like, hey, as a moment of triumph coming through this, I wanted this entire liberation. If you guys weren't going to do the liberation, I would have you guys probably would have leveled up a lot sooner. But because you were doing this, I'm like, this needs to be kind of a set piece for the campaign to be like a place where this campaign makes or breaks here. And it is going to be about defining what you guys want your quote unquote legacy to look like. Because if you just took off, okay, you guys are just adventurers. You came in here, you caused some stuff to happen, and now you're bouncing. Cool. We'll just keep doing adventurer stuff then. You coming in here and deciding, hey, I have there's a personal responsibility we have about causing this slave rebellion, and we need to make sure it succeeds, is us taking a step from you guys being high marshals to legends of these two nations now.
Yeah, I found the tier breakdown. Levels 1 through 4, local heroes. Levels 5 through 10, heroes of the realm. Levels 11 through 16, masters of the realm. And then 17 through 20, masters of the world.
Yeah.
With like superheroic proportions. So yeah.
So that's my basis for it. I wanted you guys to really feel like you earned through like a lot of hard work. You guys not just stopped an invasion of a country, you guys stopped an invasion of a continent. Your final battle was against the leader of an entire faction that you guys had been slowly kind of working your way through in the Dominion.
Yep.
And taking on Lord Benoit High Lord Benoit was you guys did incredibly well in that fight, but that fight, if the people rolled differently, could have been a very different kind of fight.
Yeah.
And you guys took that on took care of it and won that fight and really made a difference in that.
Also highlight that was a fun just day as well because we did the like, all right, we're gonna do a full long day session.
I think what was it? It was
pretty much a 12-hour session.
Yeah, 12-hour session
with like a lunch break in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good time to just kind of, instead of our, every other week getting together here for, 4 hours.
Well, we missed so much in December because of everybody's schedule.
Yeah, the holidays and everything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was the like, oh well, I'm going to have off work that week between Christmas and New Year's. Obviously, you weren't working yet, and then John being a work or a stay at home kind of dad, was like going over to their house and basically like, yeah, let's dedicate the whole day to finishing up this arc, doing the last few districts that we needed to lock down. Felt bad because you got like a bad migraine halfway through.
It did, but here's the thing: I pushed through, but also we got to start the next session with a cool recap of how that fight actually ended.
Yeah.
I had gone too long.
We definitely ended the day of like, all right, and we're done, and let's just call it, and we'll pick up next time.
Yep. I had my migraine. Here's the thing: my migraine was almost so bad I wouldn't have been able to drive back to my parents' house. It was real rough at the end of it. But I also blamed that on my not drinking enough water that day, not eating consistently enough, the things that, and also being like mentally engaged in a task for 12 hours is a lot for me. It's a lot for anybody, but for me in particular, I get migraines when that happens.
Yeah.
And if the old rule applies, if I can't see, my migraine is bad enough that I need to stay home. And my migraine was getting that bad. It's like, cool, I gotta go. I need sleep at this point. I need rest. I need water. And that's what I did. And it was awesome. What an awesome day. Had such a great day, kind of like finalizing that arc of the campaign. And the next session being kind of like a conclusion to your guys' time in Rose Retnar and Road Ashar in general.
Yep. Our little denouement episode.
Yep.
Where I finally got some downtime to read a book and up my Constitution score, which I didn't realize. I did some like research and stuff in the week since we had our session. I did not realize that like upping my Constitution score retroactively also increases like health from every level increase. Yeah. So yeah, my health went up like a full like 10 extra points that I wasn't expecting.
Heck yeah.
So I'm like, woohoo,
cool.
I'm up in triple digits now.
There you go. It's good to hear, especially since you're kind of the tank.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So, with your ridiculous AC that I gave you, that you have,
Indeed.
I'll roll the D4, and that'll be your cloak of protection.
Yep.
D4 rolls 4.
All right, I got a +4 cloak of protection. Neat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does it stack on top of everything else? Sure it does. And here's the thing. It's helped you guys out a lot.
Yeah. Like the staff you gave me, the Staff of the Woodlands, is a +2 staff, which doesn't do as much damage as my mace did, but that +2 to attack also goes for my spell attacks. So like now my spell attack is like plus like 16 or something like that. So I'm like, all right, I just gotta use more spells.
Hey. Yeah.
And basically like, use that as my my tactics moving forward. So
you guys killed a level, I think he was level 10 or 11 druid. Like could have been like considered an arch druid. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Cool stuff. You guys got a lot of cool stuff out of that. Those fights.
Yeah. So those are the fun things we did or saw or got to experience last year.
Yep.
Shout out to like the last half hour just being like, hey, here's where our D&D adventure has gone. Cool. Yeah, and I look forward to kind of where we go in the next chapter of that story. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to chat all these things. All the fun things we enjoyed about 2024 that weren't our Game of the Year and Movie of the Year episodes from the last couple weeks. We will have to take next week off because these episodes have run so long that we are basically at our cap for the That Nerdy Site Show podcast feed from Libsyn this month, and I don't want to pour more money into it than I already have to get all these huge episodes out. So we'll be taking next week off, but we'll be back in February for maybe a look at what we're anticipated in this year. That's another thing we tend to do around this time. Logan has also talked about maybe coming back on to talk about his journey through 100+ movies last year.
Yep.
So maybe we'll check about that. But yeah, just bear in mind, we will not be here next week for That Nerdy Site Show. You follow Cameron at revcabot.bsky.social. Anything you give a shout out to there, Kim?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to our game of, like, if you haven't checked it out, we did a massive Game of the Year episode where it's just Trevor and I. And you'd think it wouldn't go for 4 hours if it's just the two of us, but it sure as hell does. And we had a great time going through our honorable mentions and really giving a love to the games that got us through last year. So,
yep. You follow me at trevorjstarkey.bsky.social. On this week's That D Plus show, we talked about Skeleton Crew. We did the wrap of that. This coming week, we're going to do A Real Pain, indie film last year from Jesse Eisenberg, featuring him and Kieran Culkin. That's kind of all in the awards conversation stuff. So stay tuned for that. And then, yeah, as I said, we will be off of this podcast next week, but rejoin us in November. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, where you can find various little extra write-ups that we've been doing. My top 10 or my top 20 games of the year, Cameron's top 10 games of the year, my favorite platinums from last year. Sometime this week, we'll probably get my favorite Lego sets, if that's not already up, from 2024. So check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us on that front as well, on the written side of things. And if you like what you hear, please, once again, rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.